Hi, this is Steve with DECWARE. Today I want to chat a bit about the sounds of different tubes, tube rolling, and perhaps Chat GPT. A popular pastime while waiting for an amplifier is to spend a bunch of time on the internet researching tubes to find the best sounding ones for your soon-to-be delivered amplifier. So here are some tips about tubes that may help. When tubes are made, they are tested, and based on those results, are separated into different grades. Some are specially built for industrial applications or military reliability. Even those have to be tested and graded according to the results of those tests. You see, they're not like light bulbs, where it works or it doesn't. With tubes, there are many shades of gray between pass and fail. As an example, many manufacturers sold their perfectly good for consumers, but less than perfect testing tubes to radio manufacturers, who then rebranded the tubes with their own name. That's because radios are not microphone preamps, so they don't need to have insanely low noise specs. Everyone with the wallet for tube rolling has a holy grail tube that sounded best to them while operating in their specific component. Factor in room acoustics, speakers, personal bias, and taste, and you have a high probability of mixed results for the exact same tube. Nevertheless, given enough sample data, all of whom post results on the internet, and you begin to have trends. This is where you start hearing terms like pinched waist or halo getters, and seeing prices in the hundreds of dollars for a single 12AX7 or 6922, when the normal cost is typically less than $50. Here's the deal with spending a premium on NOS tubes. You have to know the seller, especially now because a lot of these tubes were in production in the 1940s. That means that some of these NOS tubes have been dragged around in the trunk of someone's car from one hamfest to another for over 70 years. And this gets back to grading tubes. You have to wonder if the few new old stock tubes left today aren't yesteryear's rejects. The biggest place to find out might be on eBay. Tubes claimed to be new are often lightly used. Some people in China are making new old stock replica tube boxes that they sell for all popular NOS tubes. And they also make fake tubes. They see what people are buying and print that logo on the tube. When a tube is used, or yesteryear's B stock, it can have less transconductance, which basically means lifespan in this instance. The transconductance may not be the same on both halves of the tube. Noise is another issue, perhaps the most common, and may not be the same on both halves. You see, a 12AX7 or 6922 are dual triodes, so often one will be used in a stereo application where you want good channel balance and the noise floor to be the same on both channels. Gain is another measurement that often drifts down with extended use. Everything I just described can happen with a brand new current production tube, because national security no longer depends on tight quality control like it did in the 1940s. All of this can affect the sound of a tube, how long it lasts, and your opinion of the tube. So it becomes somewhat risky to invest 4 or 5 times the normal price for a premium tube, especially if you've not heard it in your component. It is important to understand the circuit will determine what the tube sounds like, far more than the tube itself. Let's pick on a popular 6922 that at least several people liked in some forum post. The tube is entangled and dependent on the following things from your component, like plate voltage and plate current, cathode voltage, the impedance of the connecting stages in the circuit, whether or not negative feedback is used, what value of grid resistor is used, and how the stage is coupled, meaning what kind of transformer or coupling capacitors are used. The brand and value of each change the sound. Also, is the cathode regulated or natural? And is it bypassed to eliminate local negative feedback or left alone? That's around 9 variables that determine how a tube sounds. If we take the first variable, the plate resistor, a 6922, depending on the voltage, could operate with values as low as 10K and as high as 100K, although around 50K would usually be ideal. Point is, We can easily find 10 values between 10K and a 100K, so multiply the first variable by 10. Cathode resistors can also function across a range of values, so we could multiply that value by 10 as well. Then take those 10 values and double it to 20, because half we will bypass with a capacitor and half we will not. May as well triple it again as we test different values of bypass caps. This little game continues until you've got hundreds of possibilities that will all pass a signal, and at least half may even sound good, with a select few combinations sounding great. When I am voicing a component, I explore these values until I get the sound I want. Then I make sure the sound doesn't change across several known good tubes to be sure my voicing choices are consistent. You see, things like dryness, or brightness, or sharpness, or soft bass, or soundstage depth, or focus, and so on are 90% controlled by these circuit variables. The remaining 10% of the sound can be tweaked by tube rolling. This is the frosting on the cake, but make no mistake, the cake is the circuit, not the tubes. It's been my observation over the past many years that many audiophiles have this part backwards. So let me close with a true story about my first tube rolling experience. It happened during the development of our original Zen Triode 2-watt amplifier. I was focused on the input tube, which at the time was a 12 AU7. I collected audio tubes whenever I could, which at that time meant used pullouts that still tested good. You could then, and can now, buy used tubes for 10% of what they might normally cost. So I had a cigar box full of 12 AU7s and spent a weekend trying every one of them in my amplifier. I put paper labels on the tubes and wrote one-word descriptions of the dominating aspect of the sound. Some said bright, some said fat, some said blurry, some had 3 stars for mid-range, and so on. I can recall that one was so objectionable sounding that I wrote sucks on it so I wouldn't pick it a second time. Years later, I had another component that used a 12 AU7 and wanted to do some tube rolling, so I found my same cigar box and tried all the tubes in my new component. Still not very satisfied with the results. I was quickly coming to the conclusion that the component was going to have to go. Then I saw the tube labeled sucks, and something made me try it. I stuck the tube into the component, fired it up, and my jaw nearly hit the floor. 5 minutes earlier I was going to sell the component, and now it has become my holy grail. Knowing this was the tube I had to have, I researched the actual tube and batch number, and found more like it, and purchased them as backups. I would have happily paid well more than they're worth, because to me it was the right icing on the cake, and without it, the cake was uninspiring. Not to mention it was still less money than going out and buying a better cake. Now, had I, while waiting for the component to arrive, purchased an overpriced tube that was claimed to be a holy grail tube, I probably would have put it in the component first before listening to the tube that the component would have come with, mistake number 1, and B, odds of it being the holy grail in my component would have been about as good as choosing one from the cigar box at random and not listening to the rest. It is far better to invest a couple hundred in 20 used but test well tubes than to buy a single $200 tube. If you don't believe me, buy a cigar box full of NOS tubes, tape all of them up so you can't see what brand they are, and then tape your $200 tube up and chuck it in the box. Stir gently and have fun finding your favorite tube. Odds are good that you will pick a different tube, especially if your component is a little grainy or etched, sounding as many budget components are. A used tube that has dropped in transconductance below the ideal will sound warmer, smoother. A mid-fi CD player would sound better through such a tube. Lastly, just a warning that chatbots like ChatGPT and Grok are often wrong about the best tubes and really good at making stuff up depending on how you prompt them. So I see them doing a lot more damage than good when researching tubes. Anyway, have a great day and happy listening.